Okay, hello SGY 1 and 2. I just want to do a little presentation for you on the importance of thesis statements, not just in your synthesis essay, but also in all of your essays in the AP Language and Composition exam. Now, I know you've heard me rattle on about thesis statements for a long time, but it really does set up your essay. It is very, very difficult to write a coherent, adequate essay without a very strong thesis statement. So what is a thesis statement? A thesis statement is a couple of sentences in the introductory paragraph of your essay in which you make it abundantly clear to the examiner exactly the line of argument you are taking. And if you do it well, it's going to set up the rest of your essay. And if you do it badly, your essay is going to be a confused jumble. And it's going to be very unclear to the examiner, which in this case is going to be me, what you are arguing. And that makes me very sad. Big ears. There we go. Okay, so as a means of modelling how to write an effective thesis statement, we're going to have a look at the 2011 paper because this is something we looked at in class and it threw people a little bit because some of you said, well, actually, it doesn't ask me to come down on one side or the other. But in reality, it does. So we're just going to have a quick read through this. Locavores are people who have decided to eat locally grown or produced products as much as possible. With an eye on nutrition as well as sustainability, the locavore movement has become widespread over the past decade. Imagine that a community is considering organising a locavore movement. Carefully read the following 7 sources, including the introductory information for each source. Then synthesise information from at least 3 of the sources and incorporate it into a coherent, well-developed essay that identifies the key issues associated with the locavore movement and examines their implications for the community. Make sure that your argument is central. Use the sources to illustrate and support your reasoning. Avoid merely summarising the sources. Indicate clearly which sources you are drawing from, whether through direct quotation, paraphrase or summary. You may cite the sources as source A, source B, etc., or by using the descriptions in the parentheses. Okay. Although it might not seem like it, the key bit of information we have in this prompt in order for you to write an effective thesis statement is this bit right here that identifies the key issues associated with the locavore movement and examines their implications for the community. Now, quite simply, the essay is asking you to review the locavore movement. And ultimately, you need to decide whether the locavore movement is a positive thing and something that will benefit a community, or whether it is implausible and something that is in which the costs far outweigh the benefits. So in other words, when we strip it down, ultimately, you are either going to agree with the notion that the locavore movement is a positive one, or you are going to disagree. Now, the key thing is that you use evidence to support your ideas. Now, a lot of that evidence comes from the sources. That's the whole point of a synthesis essay. You're using the sources to support your argument. However, your argument should not be led by the sources. You should use them to support your own lines of thought and your own lines of inquiry. Now, if we look at this top paragraph here, the prompt has once again given us a clue of the things that we can write about in the body paragraphs of our essay. It mentions that the locavore movement places the emphasis on nutrition and sustainability. These are 2 of the key reasons why people are increasingly turning towards eating locally grown or produced products. So a way of approaching this essay is to assess the viability of those 2 ideas. If you decide to eat locally grown produce in your community, does it have a massive impact on your health and your nutritional intake. And again, if you do the same with sustainability, by eating locally, are we making the world a better place? Are we reducing our carbon footprint? Are we ensuring that the generations to come will live in a world in which the food is of as good a quality as it is today? Now, if you address these two issues, you are implicitly responding to the prompt. You are identifying key issues. The only thing left to do is decide whether the concepts of nutrition and sustainability are valid. In other words, if you decide to join the locavore movement and you decide to eat locally grown or produced products, is that going to have a massive impact on nutrition and sustainability? And by doing that, you are either going to be agreeing or disagreeing. Okay, I thought a logical thing to do would be to have a look at an essay that's scored very, very highly on this synthesis prompt. Now, we're only going to have a look at the introduction because I don't want you to be overly influenced by what another student, by another student's ideas. But this is an example of an excellent introductory paragraph with a very strong thesis statement. So let's just have a read through it together. Strolling through my beloved college town on a Saturday morning, one would encounter a quaint yet thriving farmers' market on the historic square. Here, farmers, artisans and merchants gather 3 times weekly to sell their goods. Here, local musicians congregate on the corners to serenade perusing citizens, often with an empty hat or instrument case beckoning for tips. Here, a community gathers, interacts, socialises, reverts to simpler, more amiable ways. Here is the locavore movement, intrinsically linked not only to a close-knit college town, but also to issues of nutrition, sustainability, and economics. Now, I just want you to pause the video for a second. Is this person going to be talking positively about the locavore movement and saying that it's a great thing to strive for and a great thing for a community to engage in? Or are they going to be saying, well, actually, the whole thing is massively overblown, impractical, and just won't work? So just pause the video now and make a decision on that. Okay, hopefully you've established that this person's reaction to the locavore movement is going to be an overwhelmingly positive one. And we know that because the student has included in their essay an excellent thesis statement. So here we go. Here is the locavore movement, intrinsically linked not only to the close-knit college town, but also to issues of nutrition, sustainability, and economics. Now, that is not a formulaic thesis statement, but it makes it very clear to the examiner that exactly what the student is going to be exploring in the essay, and more importantly, exactly what her attitudes are towards the locavore movement. She's made it very clear in her introduction that this is an overwhelmingly positive thing, and she cited immediately in the introduction very, very interesting evidence, and she set out exactly what she's going to write about in the essay. So we know that the body paragraphs of her essay are going to deal with the nutritional benefits of the locavore movement, sustainability, and economics. And if we look down here, you can see that her first body paragraph begins with this idea of nutrition. So nutrition is mentioned in the thesis statement, and she's come to it straight away. The nutritional value of food grown locally is far superior to that of alien products shipped over oceans, countries and borders. The majority of food at the local market was harvested less than 24 hours ago, and she's used source A to support that, which has several implications. So, please note that this student has done 2 things in her thesis statement. Firstly, she's identified the issues surrounding the locavore movement she's going to talk about, in this case, nutrition, sustainability, and economics. And secondly, she's made it abundantly clear to the examiner that she is going to be writing in a very positive light. She's going to be arguing that a community would deeply benefit from supporting locally grown produce and as a way of bringing the communities together, as a way of increasing our nutritional content, as a way of helping the local economy thrive, and as a way of making the planet a greener and more sustainable environment. Now, please note that this does not mean that in her essay she is not going to comment on the counter-argument. So at some point she will probably address the reasons why people think that the Lockerball movement is impractical. But she will then smash that counter-argument down. So immediately in the introduction, immediately we can see that this is going to be a very well-constructed essay. Okay, so just to summarise, my two top tips, whether it be the synthesis essay or the argumentative essay, when it comes to writing an effective thesis statement. And here's the first one. Make it abundantly clear what your position is. Do you agree or disagree with the issues raised in the prompt? Are you going to respond positively or negatively? And just a little caveat to that, I would strongly recommend that you do not attempt to qualify your essay because it tends to tie students in knots and it's not as easy as coming down firmly on one side or the other. And do not be thrown if the wording in the question does not ask you explicitly to agree or disagree with a given topic or issue. Ultimately, you will always have to form a solid argument based on your own ideas, regardless of whether it's a synthesis essay and you need to use the sources to support your ideas, or whether it's an argumentative essay and you are drawing on evidence, personal experience, and powerful examples. Okay, so the second one. Immediately set out the issues or ideas you are going to be addressing in your thesis statement, in your introduction. So in other words, if you look back at the student response I've just shown you, immediately in that thesis statement she's mentioned three key ideas, three key issues that she's going to be exploring. The issues of nutrition, sustainability, and economics. So, all you then need to do is use those as topic headings in 3 body paragraphs and you are going to have a very well organised essay. Now, I know that I've told you about the value of originality and not making your essays too formulaic, and you might see this as me contradicting myself. But if you look at that past example, which we will go through in class fully when you've written your essay, there is nothing formulaic about that introduction. She's begun with an excellent personal example, which makes it very clear that she understands what the Lockerball movement is, and then she's gone on to explicitly state that she's all for the Lockerball movement and that a community should genuinely consider it because of issues of nutrition, sustainability, and economics. Okay. Okay, I hope that was useful, SGY. We will go through this once you've written your essay, but please bear these issues in mind. I cannot stress enough the importance of a clear thesis statement which will act as a springboard for the rest of your essay.